Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Bitcoin. Hold the line. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. Let's go ahead and jump in. So, as we wrap up September, today is the last day of September, we've talked at length of how Bitcoin tends to not do so well in September. Okay, we've seen this many, many times by Bitcoin. And over the last several weeks, since early September, not necessarily the beginning of September, but since early September, Bitcoin has experienced about an 18 or 19% drop. Okay, so it hasn't really been the best month for Bitcoin. If you just look at monthly candles, we know that Bitcoin is down around 8.4%. Again, on average, Bitcoin loses 6% in September. But one of the things we've said is that before we had this move above the bull market support band in August, we said, all right, guys, we want to get this move above the bull market support band. And then the most bullish scenario that we could imagine, that is realistic, of course, is to come back down and test it as support. Okay? Now, this is just simply the most bullish scenario that's realistic, and it always has been, because again, going straight up without actually coming back to test the bull market support band is usually not a good thing, because it just doesn't, a lot of times you really don't know if it has really the energy that it needs to go put in new all-time highs, much less $100,000. But by going back down and holding it as support, then it would provide a level of confidence to the market that it would not have had it just continued to go up in the short term. Okay? So, we are currently in our fourth week of Bitcoin trying to hold the line. The first week was back in early September. The second week was September 13th, September 20th, this week of September 27th. You know, it's entirely possible that when we get to a new weekly open, we'll be testing it again for the fifth week in a row. Remember, I always said, no successful test of the 20-week ever feels like you're going to hold it. Okay, it never feels like it. And it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next few weeks. Now, of course, there still is a chance that we could fall below the bull market support band. I don't want to give the impression that we can't and that we're completely out of the woods. But in my experience, the longer you go holding it, your odds generally go up, right? Your odds are increasing if you can continue to hold it week after week after week. And again, this is one of those things that you should not take my word for it. Let's just go look and see maybe if I've missed something. So over here was the last time in August where we held it as support, and we held it as support week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sort of on 6. I mean, we're within like 1 or 2 percentage points of it, and then we continue to go up. Okay, so 6 weeks in a row. And it never felt like we were going to hold it. I mean, if you guys remember back at the time, again, everyone was calling for Bitcoin to go back down to much lower prices. Maybe not everyone, but a lot of people were calling for it to go down to much lower prices. And we said, you know, hey, they could be right? They could be right. And I'm sure there exists a universe somewhere where we dropped below it and we continued to just move sideways for a while before ultimately getting back on our feet. Well, that's not what happened, right? It's not what happened. And Bitcoin ultimately went on a parabolic rally, right? So then today, we're currently in week 4. Now, what are some times when we didn't hold it? Well, when we didn't hold it in May, we just fell straight through it. I mean, there was no test of it. You know, it was just, we fell down to it 1 week, and then the next week we fell below. So there was no really long test of the bull market support band. It's not like we looked at this for 4 weeks straight or 6 weeks. We didn't. We came down to it, and then it was gone, right? We were just below it immediately. If we go back even further to March, a similar scenario, February, late February, and then we came down to it, and then the following week we closed below it, and then the following week after that we closed even much further below it. So again, this was on the first test we failed. On the first test, we moved below it. The first one took us down to the 20-week, the second one took us below it. On this one, you know, maybe you could argue there was some tests going on in here, but we really didn't get to the bull market support band until September 16th. And then on September 23rd, the week of September 23rd, that is when we in fact fell below it. Okay, so this one, technically speaking, we had on the second week we fell below. This one, technically speaking, on the second week we fell below. This one we had 6 weeks that held as support in a row, and we ultimately held it as support, and we didn't test it for like 6 months straight, or more than 6. I mean, from October until May. This one fell below on the second candle. So technically speaking, so one to the 21 to one down to the 21 week EMA. The second one took us below. This one was down to the 20 week. The second one took us below. This one was down to the 20 week. The second one took us below. The only one that held as support was the one that actually, we were we had 6 candles in a row holding it as support. And if you go back even further, to the beginning of this bull market, this one was a long test of it, right? A really long test. This one was a fairly long test as well. And then after that, we got fairly short tests. But we actually ultimately held it as support. But this was much later on in the cycle. And ultimately, we failed to hold it. And here you can see we actually failed to hold it. It was the third time. The first one took us to the 20 week. The second one took us to the 21 week. The third one took us below. So what this is all meaning, is that the longer we go without falling below it, I think there would be some reason to get a little bit optimistic. Now, I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that we have to hold it, but what I would say, and I said this a month ago, is that it never feels like we're going to hold it. There's always going to be, a majority of people calling for lower prices. And of course, they're sometimes right? They're definitely sometimes right. We've seen it fall below before. However, the good news is that so far we're holding the line, right? We're holding the damn line. And we're currently in our 4th week of doing so. Now, some people might say, every test is weakening the line, right? It weakens the line. And every time we go down to it, it weakens it just a little bit more. Well, on the contrary, I would also say that a continued test of it and the fact that we keep getting pushed back up shows that there actually is a lot of buying pressure at these levels. It's not like that you have wimpy bulls camping out at the 20 week. You have some bulls with some powder to spend, and they're spending it, right? They're spending it, and they in fact are trying to get Bitcoin to hold the line. All right. Now, the good news for us is that the 20-week SMA should start turning up relatively soon. Within 1 to 2 weeks, we'll see it level off and start moving up. Okay, so we have that to look forward to. So as long as Bitcoin can hold the line up here, then the 20-week SMA should start to turn over and roll back up. And if that's the case, it's even better, because then we can hold the 20-week as we're moving up, which I think is better than holding it as we're moving down. No one wants to chase the 20-week down, right? You don't want to keep chasing it down, because a few weeks ago, the 20-week on September 6th was at 42K. Now the 20-week is at 40.5K. You don't want to just keep chasing it down forever. You'd like for it to turn over and start to roll up. That way you can hold it as support as it's moving higher. So we'll continue to keep a close eye on this. Bitcoin is now in its 4th week of holding the line. The last test back last year was about 6 weeks. Okay, and it lasted from the very first. The last day of August is when it started, but really it was mostly September going into early October is what happened last year. This time it's that first week of September, so maybe getting into the second week that had the first test, and now we are in fact in the week that will take us into October. Okay, so the next week, assuming we're still trading at around somewhere between say 40 to 44K, somewhere in that region, it's still going to look like we're testing the bull market support band. Okay. So keep that in mind. It looks like at the very least we'll have a 5th week that'll be somewhat around it within a couple percentage points, unless we just get a crazy pump here in the next few days. We should be having a 5th week at the very least that's testing the bull market support band. So far, the bulls have held the line. So far, we have held the line, and we'll continue to see if we can continue holding the line for the next several weeks. If you guys like the content, remember we do have the premium list at intothecryptoverse.com. If you want to know how I'm navigating these markets, make sure you subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, click the bell icon to turn on your notifications, and I will see you next time. Bye.